Welcome back to Dave's Gone By on this Sunday night. Now, people know that I'm kind of a sports fan, more of a theater fan, and actually a professional theater critic. Have been one for 20 years. So it's pretty natural for me to read other people's reviews of Broadway and to write my own, but it's kind of less common, even in the blog era, even in the website era, to read reviews of other things. I mean, I guess you can Google and find reviews of restaurants and stuff like that. And you get sports writers who assumedly are objective, but of course when they write about a game, they're going to be somewhat subjective. If the team is really bad, they'll start putting those nasty little adjectives in there and being cute about how bad the team is. But it's rare to find actual critics of the sport and the way the sport is covered in media. And that's why probably my very favorite sports writer is a fellow named Phil Mushnick, and he's been writing for a while for the New York Post, and I read his column all the time because he doesn't just talk about the sport, he talks about the way it's covered on TV and well, how in some ways media has poisoned sport, but he also sometimes picks out the little gems and the good things too. So, have so many things to ask Phil Mushnick about. Let's get right to it. But first, welcome to the Daverhood, Mr.
Thank you,
Mushnick.
David.
And so let's start. How long have you been with the Post?
Too long.
Nice.
I think I'm in my 35th year, believe it or not.
Congratulations.
I began as a 20-year-old copy boy in 73. Yeah, 35. I'm in my 35th year.
How long did it take to go from like a copy boy to having your own column?
Let's see. It was a slow process at first, and then it quickly accelerated. I was, a copy boy in 73 through... Got my first byline in 77, so 73 to 81, about 8 years.
Huh.
8 years.
Wow.
Boy columnist, rapidly aging.
Now, was your column always what it kind of is now, or were you more of the typical, like, you would interview a coach, you would interview a player, or you just write about the games, or did it have to evolve?
My first 6 years on the sports side with the byline as a beat reporter. I covered my first beat was the New York Cosmos soccer team. Do you remember it?
I remember Pele and all that.
Yeah,
yes.
Pele and Quinali and Beckenbauer, great stuff. I traveled the world, got to see some fantastic things and meet some fantastic people. And after that, I covered the New Jersey Nets of the Piscataway years.
Okay.
And I covered the New York Rangers days gone by. The general manager was the late John Ferguson, and Jean-Guy Talbot was the coach. So that was a 77-78 year.
Mm-hmm.
And around 81, it began as a TV/radio column, and it's kind of evolved, or perhaps even regressed, into a kind of a social critiques and investigative stuff and consumer issues and as you know, David, as most fans know by now, certainly, TV's the tail that wags the dog. Nothing happens in sports, in mainstream sports anyway, without television's full authority. And so when you cover television, you really get to cover everything as it relates to sports.
Well, there are certain issues that you specifically have been hammering at for a long time.
Me? Yeah.
Okay.
Redundantly? Yeah.
Well, no, I mean, since we just got through the football season, there's the whole thing of starting times of games being moved rather indiscriminately and rather last minute without regard to, say, 40 to 50,000 people.
Or 70,000, or, or the service people involved, from policemen, policewomen to traffic and ushers and security guards, and it's just it's quite a mess. And as time has proven, the night games tend to be a little less civil, and you need that much more security, and it's a little more dangerous traveling at night, the whole bit.
And one thing, sorry.
No, that's you're right. I have written that. I've been writing it for 25 years. A lot of good has done any of us.
I understand why they would want games to be in prime time. I mean, I kind of understand that, but then why start them at 9 o'clock and have them run till after 12:30? I don't understand. If you start a
Well,
game at 6
I
o'clock...
kind of have a theory on that. I think the end of human civilization as we used to know it began when Bowie Kuhn was the commissioner of baseball, and the World Series became exclusively a primetime sport. And, suddenly, and it sounds almost Pollyanna and almost mundane at this point, but the fact that kids today can't be awake for the end of a World Series game strikes me as almost a crime against society. I just know that my formative years included watching World Series games to the end. And I'm not saying that games on a Tuesday have to be played at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Hardly.
Because then you're pushing people, you're hurting their workday. And
yet we managed. When I was a kid, and I did see the last 4 innings of every game. Watching the end of the game is certainly more important than watching the beginning. But there's no good reason why games can't begin at 7:30 as opposed to 8:45.
Yeah, I just don't understand the logic from their point of view of where the money is, since games are going past 11 o'clock at night. That's after prime time.
Well, they want to maximize primetime advertising revenues on both coasts.
Oh, so in California...
Right, so they get like an hour and a half on West Coast time. And yet, people, I'll write this, well, what about the people on the West Coast? Well, why should anyone on the East Coast be shut out of the end of a Red Sox-Yankees playoff game?
Yeah, right.
And yet no one on the West Coast would be precluded from being home and watching the end of an East Coast game that began at 7:30. So that's 10:30. That's 7:30 on the West Coast. They're going to watch that game.
Yeah, and as you said, I think I read your article about the Giant game a couple of weeks ago, where why did they have to in Green Bay?
Right.
I mean,
it wasn't going to be a pleasant day if it had begun at 1 p.m., but it would have been on the wind chill. It would have been probably 15 to 20 degrees warmer.
Right.
But it's just a matter of common sense and common decency. Football was never designed to be a nighttime game in Green Bay, Wisconsin on January 20th. It just wasn't.
Well, then again, probably if you went to hockey, up to Canada, and you asked them about hockey, they say, we play hockey at 2 in the morning. It makes a man out of you.
Sure, well, that's for ice time. If you can get some rink time at 2 a.m., I played hockey, and we used to get rink time at 2 a.m. And we paid for it, and we're happy to get it. But that certainly wasn't a public spectacle.
Fine wine, great books, priceless antiques. All that's missing is something to listen to. But of course, episodes of Dave's Gone By, the music, the comedy, the perceptive talk, entire shows preserved on compact disc, any episode you choose, just $11, shipping included. No home is complete without Dave's Gone By on CD. So visit davesgoneby.org because you're worth it.
Hi, this is Phil Mushnick, sports columnist for the New York Post. You're listening to Dave's Gone By on WGBB.
Now, here's an issue that you've hit pretty hard on that I'm somewhat in agreement, but we may differ a little bit on this one, and that is...
Differ away, brother.
On the steroids scandal.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, it's a terrible thing that steroids will do to a person. It'll kill him young. It might make him totally crazy and suicidal and all that. Steroid is a bad drug, but lots of drugs are bad. But if an athlete chooses to use them to enhance his performance, why is that so bad?
You mean beyond the fact that it's illegal?
Well, then let's put this in: should they be illegal? Should they remain illegal?
Well, you just said that they're bad for you, and
so
we can
coffee.
take.
So cigarettes.
Coffee, but I don't think coffee is designed to cause your back to break out, the acne, your liver to fall out, and your heart to burst.
Well, you know what?
I don't think coffee gives you a little buzz in the morning, but I don't think it. I've never heard of anyone suffering from coffee rage.
You feed the wrong child peanuts, and
well, that's an allergic reaction, David. Come on, But I think we're talking in a competitive sense. I think we have to look at a level playing field. I think back now on how many players maybe there wasn't that many in the end, who may have tried to compete clean, and their careers were put at disadvantage, and they operated at a disadvantage because they were clean, as opposed to players who were dirty.
Right, but define clean. Let's say there's a player who
clean?
maybe makes a cocktail of vitamins and Chinese herbs and things that happen to be legal, maybe because the government just doesn't even know what they are. But
Right.
that was what this guy does. He makes these weird special concoctions, and he's getting a leg up on all his other players, everybody else, because he has this special brew. But it's legal, but he's injecting vitamins or whatever he's doing. Is that pushing the envelope?
I'm missing something here. Why are you suggesting that if something's illegal but used by an athlete to enhance his or her performance, we should look the other way at it? Or we should give it, if...
So your real
if you drive home faster because you're drunk,
yeah.
you're illegally drunk. But you sure got home faster, and that was your object.
Well, I'm getting, I guess, two different issues kind of merging here. It's like you're against the illegality.
If you're advocating the legalization of anabolic steroids, human growth hormone, that's fine. We could talk at that level. But if we're saying why should we object to the use of those drugs, let's start with them being illegal,
okay.
and then let's go to.
But if they were legal, would you?
Cheating. If it's illegal and you're using them, it's enhancing your performance. You're cheating.
But if they were legal,
so what does that say to the non-cheaters? It says you better get with the program, brother, because if you're not cheating, you're going to be at a disadvantage. And then David, it gets back to the whole thing about Bud Selig and Donald Fear indulging this stuff and knowing full well that it was going on and whether there was a drug conspiracy, and in my mind, certainly there was a conspiracy of silence, a conspiracy for profit. And if you were to find out that in your walk of life, I've written this analogy. Let's say I operate a factory for a bunch of owners, and you represent the union for those workers, and it comes to our full acknowledgement that the workers are doing illegal drugs to get productivities up, profits up, demand for the products up, so therefore pricing is up, and yet we know that these drugs are A, illegal, and B, dangerous, and we decide just to keep our mouths shut because, after all, profit is up, and that's what profit across the board for both the employees and the owners and the investors in our company. That's called racketeering.
Yeah. No, that is a good analogy.
We've created a false front that this is a prim and proper industry, and what we've done is engaged in a criminal conspiracy, an illegal drug conspiracy for profit. You or I would presume, would be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law and probably be doing hard time. Because we can hit home runs or we're pretty good, shortstop. Whether this should be indulged or dismissed or rationalized or excused, I have trouble with that.
Okay,
you started this, David.
I know. That was the point of the conversation. Although I will say, I on some level, I'm also playing straw man because I've never taken a drug in my life. But I do. One last thought about it.
Shot. They're a lot of fun.
No, but if you were blind, would you take medicinal marijuana?
If it were prescribed to me, if I were blind, and I were in great pain, and with no hope, would I push the limits of the law? Would I disregard or violate the law? Yeah, I probably would.
Okay, but I get the feeling that even when you were talking about the
I don't
steroid
know these
stuff,
athletes to be impaired. I think I know them to be privileged as athletes and gifted.
It's just so funny. We've come so far from like Babe Ruth, and his cocktail was 20 hot dogs.
But and a quart of scotch. but
well, Scotch is as bad a drug as some of the other things that
by
they're taking.
By some standards, yeah. And he played hungover, or.
Yeah.
But Babe Ruth, I would suggest to you that alcohol was a detriment to his abilities as opposed to an enhancer.
As were his
I think
binges.
He succeeded in spite of drugs, but not in spite of alcohol, as opposed to because of alcohol. By the way, the thing that Babe Ruth, this is kind of a neat little nugget. Babe Ruth, the greatest thing, and this is what people I for the most part don't understand about great running backs. His vision was so superior. Columbia University in the early 30s did a study on Ruth and found that even when he went hunting and he was hungover, and when he went on a hunting trip with friends, he was the best hunter in the group. He was the best shot among them, and they found that his eyesight was so superior. He was like a 1 in a million guy, that he could read. I forget quite the distance, but he could read a license plate on a car from 100 yards, that kind of thing.
And he still shot at the car. So
yeah, right. You know how many cars he bagged?
Really? Oh, really?
He had them up over the mantelpiece. He had Buicks and Pontiacs.
2 Game Awards, 7 hunters, and a purebred Guernsey cow. Yeah.
But I mean, to compare alcohol to something that could impair your performance to something that can enhance it, and again is illegal and dangerous, and alcohol is certainly dangerous. I think that's the ultimate apples and oranges, or apples and lug nuts.
30 seconds is a long time. You can say a lot in half a minute about your business, your product to sell, your message. Say it on Dave's Gone By. Easy, inexpensive, effective. For details and the rate card, davesgoneby.org or email davesgoneby@aol.com. Imagine how much you can say to my listeners by advertising on Dave's Gone By. Just like this. 28, 29, 30. We're talking with Phil Mushnick, columnist for the New York Post, and if people want to read Phil's column, they can catch it. Let's see, I know you've got 2 different columns on a Sunday, one about television and one about sports, both in the Post. And what are the other days of the week that you're there?
Mondays we got one Friday, and as you said, 2 on Sundays. And by the way, I grew up in a very Broadway-centric household. My mother was a dilettante. And spent many when I wanted to be watching baseball, I was in the theater watching Camelot and Brigadoon and Flower Drum Song and the like. So
did that turn you against Broadway, or?
Absolutely not.
Oh, good. Okay.
Absolutely.
We're kind of a very Broadway-ish show sometimes here, but I also like sports, and talking with Mr. Mushnick, no relation to Little Shop of Horrors,
right,
about all sorts of stuff and getting into juicy arguments. And here's perhaps another one. I understand, and you go after this quite a lot, that there's an ugliness to showboating and grandstanding and even trash talking. It doesn't really have to be part of the game, certainly on national telecasts and shows.
It doesn't have to be part of anything. When did immodesty become an attribute?
Well, you want to be bigger and better and braver and bolder, and part of that might be
bigger
talking...
and better and braver and bolder. Why do you have to be a bigger showboat?
I don't know. Maybe that is just giving you false courage that gets you through it and makes the other team feel bad.
I don't know if it's false. I think this stuff was blessed. It's become tired. It's become conditioned. It's become reflexive.
Yeah.
Years ago, we with the advent and the growth of ESPN and other sports networks, we saw that that the athleticism, the skill in doing something, kind of took a backseat to the showboating, to the immodesty, to the self-aggrandizement.
Okay.
I've written something recently about Rocky Marciano and how he was a great heavyweight champion, but he was so immodest that, if we juxtapose him and throw him into 2008, he'd probably be considered commercially unacceptable because he was such a modest man. And
but who changed all that? in some ways.
We did. The media.
Well, the media, I pin it on someone who I didn't really like
Howard Cosell.
in my early years. Well, Ali.
Yeah, well, but
the greatest athlete of...
There was a time when the media would shout that down, would ridicule it, condemn it, and make sure it stuck. And then Howard Cosell, who I knew as one of the great frauds in journalism,
Ouch. Okay.
decided that it was a wonderful thing, that he was expressing some sort of a cultural sentiment as opposed to being a braggart. And you can see the residual of it today. You can't have a boxing press conference without the two guys telling each other they're going to kick each other's butt, and they have a fight right there. It's
that's stupid. Yeah, but I mean, with Ali, that's the reason my family didn't really like Ali in those years when he was the greatest, quote unquote, and the king, because he was just like talking like an idiot, and he didn't have to do that. But it made him part of the legend. Is that he did that?
HBO did a documentary on Ali on the Ali Fraser fights. About the documentary ran about 10, 12 years ago, and they were gratuitously acclaimed, I felt. And they generally do some good stuff. HBO does some good stuff, but in this one, it strongly suggested, it didn't even suggest it, it inferred that liberal America backed Ali and conservative America backed Frazier. And I was in college at the time, and I guess I was a card-carrying liberal, and I couldn't stand Ali, and I was a big Frazier fan, and I resented the fact that HBO would say, everyone on this side was on that side, everyone on this side, and that side, and I like Frazier because he struck me as a sportsman, what I had been raised to perceive as a sportsman. And I felt that Ali said some for someone who even today is widely seen as a champion of African American liberation, said some of the most racist stuff. He called Frazier a gorilla. I mean,
yeah.
And we're supposed to forget that. I mean, he referred to Cassius Clay as a slave name, but Cassius Clay, in fact, was named after the editor of I think it was a Lexington newspaper, who was a strident anti-slavery activist, and then had his newspaper burnt down and moved to Cincinnati, where Cassius Clay founded the Cincinnati Enquirer, which also served in those days. Your newspapers took one stance or the other. You were pro-slavery or anti-slavery. And again, he took this anti-slavery position and risked his life. I think he was a Yale graduate, the original Cassius Clay. And yet, when Cassius Clay declared and that was a slave name, people bought into it. Oh, that was a slave name. No, it wasn't a slave name. Quite the contrary.
Whoa. Well, I mean, actually,
what brought that up?
Well, what brought this up was about the showboating and stuff. But there is one. Sam, I'm with you on all of that, actually. But the one thing that I don't get is why you're so opposed to when
because
a
kids
football
are impressionable.
No, not that part. No, that I do understand. I'm saying when a team is winning the game by a lot.
Right.
Like a football team is winning 65-12, or
right.
It's an odd number to be winning by, or a basketball.
That is a good score.
Why can't they run points? That's the idea.
Why would you wanna?
Because
Why do you
you
want to
can.
kick someone when they're down? The game's over. You've vanquished your opponent. You're the conqueror. Now what do you want to do? Kick them some more?
Well,
to what end? What does it serve?
Well, first of all, at the end of the year, how many points did the team score as a whole over the course of the year? How it all goes into the record books and count. It's like if you're Tiger Woods, let's say. I know you have issues with him, but
that's an individual sport. If you're playing golf, you're playing against the course.
Oh,
you
really?
You want to get the ball in the hole as quickly as possible.
So if you're
as few strokes as possible.
Yeah.
If in a football game or you're playing against the clock and an opponent, you've destroyed them.
Right.
Why kick them some more?
Well, it isn't necessarily. Showboating is kicking them, but just being able to pass the ball and score again, that's what you do. That's how you keep winning. And yeah, okay, that's granted.
I can't. You seem like a very reasonable, rational, commonsensical guy.
Yeah, sometimes.
If you were up 65-12 I'd say, all right, let's throw an 80-yard pass now and go up 72-12. I think you'd run the clock out. You'd bring all your subs in.
I would bring the subs in so I would rest my best players. Too. What? Sorry?
Your subs practiced all week, too. Maybe it's time they got a shot.
Yeah, no, I would do it so in case, God forbid, in garbage time, my quarterback broke his leg, I would want to sit him as soon as possible. But if my subs could run up the points, I would let them do it.
I wouldn't tell them to fall down.
Right.
But to what good end does it serve? It serves an ugly end. So the other team goes out and and this becomes self-fulfilling. This becomes then self-perpetuating. Next year they want to do it to you, and suddenly you see what happens. Now we have football games before kickoff. There's brawls.
Well, but that shouldn't be the reaction. The reaction should be, hey, the idea is to score points, and if we end up scoring, 70 more points than you, then get better next year and try and beat us.
I thought the goal was to win the game.
Well,
not to humiliate your opponent.
I don't see it as humiliating unless it's really nasty about it.
Have you ever lost 65-12, and then been losing 65-12, and the other team keeps throwing into the end zone? Clearly, they've gotten you beat, but they're gonna.
I guess
they've got you vanquished.
All right, maybe.
I don't know. I don't think you would have your kids do it.
Huh. If you ever saw me, and if you ever had kids, or ever have kids in the future, if they're anything like me, they would be on the 12 side. And I don't think I would hold it against the 65 side.
Well taken. You win.
As long as they don't punch me, and anything like that. Oh, my gosh. Unfortunately, we've had this wonderful time, but I've got to let you go. But please, this is automatically an invite back to appear again on Dave's Gone By. So please, everybody, read Phil Mushnick several times a week in the New York Post. And, of course, you can see all his columns at New York Post.
Free since 2002.
Are you going to write a book at some point?
No, if I have a chance. Well,
yeah, I guess with all those columns, it's kind of difficult. And you're not retiring anytime soon, I would hope.
You don't retire, you expire.
Well, that's what I like to hear. We agree there.
All right, brother.
Phil Mushnick, thanks so much.
David, thank you.